It was a cold November evening in the heart of the city. The streets shimmered under the soft glow of streetlights, and the wind carried with it the scent of roasted chestnuts, car fumes, and just a hint of winter. People bustled past one another, buried in scarves, lost in their thoughts, unaware of the quiet figures who often went unseen among them. On the corner of Fifth and Rosewood, just outside an upscale French restaurant where valet drivers opened doors for men in custom suits and women in velvet gowns, a girl stood. She couldn't have been more than 12. Her jacket was 2 sizes too big and hung off her like a borrowed shadow. Her shoes were scuffed, one sole flapping slightly with every step she took, and her small fingers, red from the cold, clutched a plastic bag that barely had anything inside. She had been standing there since the early evening. Watching. Waiting. Inside the restaurant, the warm buzz of conversation was layered over the sound of soft jazz and silverware on porcelain plates. The diners didn't know she was there. Most wouldn't have cared even if they had. Except for one man. At the far end of the restaurant, sitting by the window, was a man whose name often graced business magazines and news reports. Charles Renner. Known to many as a self-made billionaire who had risen from nothing and built a tech empire that revolutionized artificial intelligence. To most, he was untouchable. Private. Cold. Brilliant. He sat alone, his table elegantly set with a plate of seared duck breast, roasted vegetables, and a glass of red wine. His phone lay face down beside his plate, a rare gesture of disconnection that even his assistant would have raised eyebrows at. He wasn't scrolling. He wasn't taking calls. He was simply eating, quietly, as though trying to taste something he hadn't had in years. Outside, the girl shivered. Her stomach growled, loud enough that she clutched it, embarrassed, even though no one could hear. She had already walked past the dumpsters behind the building. Nothing. She had peered into the kitchen's back door, where a worker shouted and slammed it shut. The smell of food had nearly broken her. But she didn't cry. Instead, when the diners started to leave and the valet began whistling as he lined up the last of the cars, she stepped forward toward the entrance. She didn't want to go in. She knew better than to try. But her eyes landed on one man who hadn't left yet. Charles Renner was standing near the front desk, buttoning his coat, his unfinished plate being cleared away by a waiter. And for the briefest moment, he turned toward the window and saw her. Just a silhouette at first. Small. Slight. Shivering. But her eyes caught the light. Big, brown, and filled with something that froze him to the floor. He stepped outside. She didn't run. Most would have. But she just looked up at him, her chin slightly raised, not in pride but in dignity. Like she'd asked this question 100 times and would ask it again, even if every answer was no. "Excuse me, sir, may I have your leftovers?" She didn't look away. Didn't shuffle or beg. She asked it like it was a question, not a plea. For a second, Charles didn't answer. The wind tugged at his coat, and the street lamps buzzed softly overhead. The world held its breath. And then he said, "Come with me." The girl blinked. She didn't expect that. Neither did the valet, who half-stepped forward, unsure if he needed to intervene. But Charles didn't touch her. He simply walked back into the restaurant, gesturing for the host, who had just started cleaning up. "Can you pack up my meal? And something hot for a child. Whatever the chef would give his own daughter." The host hesitated, eyes darting to the girl now standing just outside the threshold. But Charles gave a slight nod, and that was enough. 10 minutes later, the girl was seated in the back corner of the restaurant, her small hands wrapped around a cup of soup so warm it made her eyes water. She took the tiniest sip, then another, until tears slipped down her cheeks silently. She didn't sob. She didn't whimper. She just let them fall, like snow melting on skin. Charles sat opposite her, not eating. Just watching. "What's your name?" She hesitated. "Ellie." Where's your family, Ellie? Gone. No hesitation that time. Just the weight of a truth she had lived with long enough to no longer flinch from. He didn't ask more. She didn't offer. But after she finished, he walked her out, knelt down, and handed her something else. Not money. A card. With a name. An address. A time. If you come here tomorrow, you'll have a warm place to sleep. And food. No tricks. No questions unless you want to answer them. Ellie took the card. Her hands shook as she held it. But again, she only nodded. She didn't thank him. Not out loud. But he saw it in her eyes. The same eyes that had once looked at him from the mirror, long ago, before he had become the man everyone feared. That night, Charles couldn't sleep. The girl's voice echoed in his head. May I have your leftovers? He remembered being 10, sitting in the rain behind a Chinese restaurant with his little sister, sharing a cold egg roll someone had thrown out. He remembered the ache of hunger, the anger at the world, the vow he'd made never to feel powerless again. He had built empires. Bought islands. Flown jets. But he had forgotten what it meant to see himself in someone else. The next morning, Ellie showed up. She didn't smile. She didn't run into his arms. She just stood at the gate of the shelter he had called in favors to secure overnight, the card clenched tightly in her palm. And she walked in. What happened after that, how her presence changed not just his life but the lives of hundreds, is what makes this story more than just another headline. It was the beginning of something neither of them could have ever imagined.